give folks just a few more minutes to get logged in before we get started today. But it's great to see so many of you joining us from wherever you might be. You can see outside in Chicago today, it's a beautiful late summer day. So it's nice to see the sun, and it's a little warm, which is great. So give folks just a few more minutes and then we'll get started. If you're not familiar with Zoom, although I'm sure many of you are, we today will be using the Q&A function. So if you do have questions or want to upvote existing questions on the list, it looks like that note's been put in the chat. You can always add that to the Q&A function. Also noted there is that today's webinar actually will be recorded or is being recorded and will be shared here in the next 3 business days. So just keep that in mind. Monday, this coming Monday is a holiday here, and so it may actually not be until Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. So I think the participants have kind of trailed off a little bit. So it looks like those of you who are here, we'll go ahead and get started. So today, or this morning, actually is a presentation for you as international parents sending your children to the college here at the University of Chicago. I want to welcome you. Certainly, my name is Nick Siemens. I'm the Executive Director here at the Office of International Affairs at the University of Chicago. And here is what we'll kind of run through today, just in terms of the session, specific to information about and support from OIA for your students, advising on their student visas, travel abroad and reentry, employment authorization related to internships like CPT, as well as post-graduation employment authorization, OPT or academic training, and a number of other kind of important items, how you as parents can remain in contact even with the Office of International Affairs if you wish, and who to reach out to. I'm joined this morning by my colleague, Samuel Aqua, who you see here. Samuel is the OIA advisor to the college, so your students will be working directly with him as they arrive on campus, participate in the international pre-orientation. Certainly, they'll have an opportunity to meet Samuel during the orientation week. And then he will be reaching out to all of them as classes get started in September to introduce himself, make sure that your students know how to reach out to him via email, make sure that they know how to schedule an appointment, when his drop-in advising hours are, and just in general, how to reach out to him. Okay. So the Office of International Affairs is a central unit within the university in that we support the entire university's US-based immigration. And typically, or on this, for student-based immigration, that does mean the F1 or J1 student visa. That is likely one of the two that your students are actually going to apply for, or have already applied for, perhaps been issued by a US consulate or embassy. And we are a supportive office, providing advice and guidance specific to US immigration, and in that specific case, the F1 and J1 visa. The office also supports the university's employment-based immigration practice. So that includes H-1Bs and green cards for those of you who are familiar or maybe have had either or gone through any of those processes. So in that way, again, we aren't necessarily housed within the college, but more broadly, supporting the university's international efforts. As I mentioned, Samuel is the assigned OIA advisor to the college, but all international students at the University of Chicago are assigned an advisor on the basis of the school or division to which they've been admitted. already mentioned this as well, but we, are meant to be a resource and support to your students as they kind of navigate their academic programs here at the university. Within the college, there are a number of offices: the programming office, academic advising, a number of offices that are here to provide support and act as a resource to your student to ensure that they kind of navigate through their academic program successfully here at the university and make their way toward graduation, which is always an exciting time. One of the things that we often tell students is that there is a lot of information specific to U.S. immigration policy and law available online. Many of our students, speak to students at other schools, their friends who are going to different schools who may actually have already, departed home and are, getting ready to start or have started, especially if they're attending semester-based schools. But the one thing we try to convey to international students here at the university is that, it's good to have some of the basis, some of the background information. But if they have specific questions about their student visas, the regulations that govern those visas, and opportunities that they find along the way here during their academic program, we just ask them to reach out to us, to discuss, their options, given how different, even small factual changes in specific situations can have a large impact in terms of someone's immigration status. So we ask you as our partners in all of this to just remind your students, to reach out to OIA if they have questions or need additional information about, any of the topics that we'll kind of run through today. And I will also just say that we share some of the same, in fact, it's much of the same information with students during the orientation programs and then ongoing throughout the year. So in general, as I mentioned, OIA is available on campus. We have an office. Most of our students at this point reach out to us remotely or virtually. We are available, in person, but it definitely seems like there is, more interest in, in some of those opportunities to be remote or virtual. So Samuel is available by phone, by email, certainly by, scheduling an appointment for in-person consult, but obviously, also virtually by Zoom with drop-in hours or Zoom by appointment, whatever the interest or the need is on the part of the student. We work with a number of different offices on campus to provide specific and kind of tailored programs for international students who are kind of navigating not only their academic status at the university, but also their immigration status in the United States. One of those, and one of our, perhaps most important partners, or one of, many important partners, is career advancement. Your students will get to know the team at Career Advancement, who are terrific in helping our students navigate and find internships, especially, competitive internships. And we work very closely with them to ensure that students on visas are aware not only of the parameters of their student visa, but how to actually apply for and obtain the employment authorization, like CPT or some other authorization that will allow them to pursue those opportunities. We have ongoing workshops and programs throughout the year that are specific to employment, not only internships while your students are in their programs, but post-graduation employment authorization in the form of OPT or STEM OPT. Some of you may be familiar with that. We work with campus partners to provide information and tax software access to international students who need to file taxes annually in the United States, which is a confusing and kind of complex system. We work very closely with our colleagues at Student Wellness to make sure that students understand and are aware of the the supportive services that are available there, but also just navigating or trying to figure out even U.S. health insurance, which again is another complex and sometimes complicated system. But all of that, again, to say that there are a number of offices here that are solely, operating to support students and ensure that they kind of, if they're not sure where to go to get the information, the answer to their questions or something to address their needs, then they know to reach out, and we can kind of help them. And sometimes that's just by connecting them to the correct resource. So some important immigration information, and again, we like to share this with you as parents because it allows us to work in partnership to just ensure that your students are kind of paying attention to their student visas and aware of some of the guardrails specific to those visas. Your students again are going to get all of this information, but the first thing you see here is completing a check-in. And the reason we ask for that is not only because it's a regulatory requirement, but it also allows us the opportunity to ensure that U.S. Customs and Border Protection entered your students' information correctly, issued to them an arrival record in the form of what's called an I-94, and we'll look at one of those momentarily, and that is correct information. So that's kind of the first step, and we just ask students to complete this step within a week, 5 days after they arrive in Chicago. If your student is arriving in the U.S. in another city to visit family or friends, they don't need to worry about this step until they actually arrive here in Chicago. And then they'll start to get reminders from us, to complete this step. The next thing that we will convey to your students is that in F or J status, they have some responsibilities for maintaining their visa status. The first of which is that each academic quarter of the academic year, and that's autumn, winter, and spring, they are required to be enrolled full-time, right? So it's not only a regulatory requirement, but it's also a requirement in the college. So at no point typically will your student ever be enrolling part-time or in just one or two classes. From an immigration standpoint, there are exceptions to that rule. If your student needs to go on a leave for any number of reasons, then they should not only reach out to their academic advisors in the college, but certainly reach out to Samuel, who can kind of guide them through the process of either pausing or leaving their immigration status until they are ready to return and continue with their studies. The second thing, and this again is where we ask for your help, your students likely know their U.S. address already. They will likely have information about where they're going to be living, in which residence, what that street address is, the room number, all of that. If they don't know that already, I'm sure they'll learn that soon. But it's important that your students, and I think this is one of the things they can do before they even arrive on campus, but updating their profile and information in my.uchicago.edu. The my.uchicago.edu portal is kind of the access point for your students where they will enroll in classes, view their schedule, they'll look at grades, but it's also where all of their biographic or demographic information is located. And that includes their foreign address, which is a requirement, as well as their U.S. address, right? The address, of their residence here on campus, once they move in. Equally important is that they also list in that system an emergency contact, both name, relationship, and contact information, a phone number and email. I can't tell you how important it is, and I know many of you already know this, but again, if you have an opportunity to work with your student just to review their information in my.uchicago.edu, ensuring that their U.S. address, their foreign address appears correctly, and that perhaps your information as their parent or legal guardian in the event of an emergency is also listed and correct. The next piece here for maintenance of status is working only with authorization. The student visas that your students will be on here at the University of Chicago have some pretty clear parameters about when authorization is required and when it is not. And you see here that any on-campus employment that could be as a research assistant, it could be working in the library or any number of opportunities on campus is permitted without authorization. The regulations permit or allow for that without any prior approval from either the US government or this office at OIA. It's when your student finds an off-campus opportunity in the form of an internship or any number of other off-campus employment opportunities will require authorization. And typically that authorization is very specific to certain times throughout the year, but also the work that they're doing off campus has to be supported by the academic program. And this is, again, where we work very closely with career advancement to ensure that that your students kind of are getting the recognition for the internship that they should have, but also getting the authorization. I mentioned earlier just reporting changes to their status, both academic, to their academic advisors, but also to their OIA advisor, to Samuel, who's here with us this morning. And that includes leaves of absence, change of status, under enrollment, I mentioned earlier, not typical, but it does occasionally come up, usually in the form of a leave of absence, if there is need for that. So just reminding, students that they should reach out not only to their academic advisor, but also to their OIA advisor as those things come up. The final piece here is just maintenance or maintaining valid documents. One of the things that we remind students is that they should capture electronic copies of their passport, the US visa sticker that's in their passport, the I-20 or DS-2019 document that's been issued for the purpose of obtaining that visa. If they have electronic copies of those documents, oftentimes they're easier to replace than if they don't have those documents. But one of the things here to keep in mind is that the US requires 6 months of validity in a passport when someone is traveling into the United States, right? So from the next dated entry, your passport must be valid into the future for at least 6 months in order to be granted, entry into the United States. Often what that means is that students over the course of their time here may actually have to apply for a renewed passport either through their country of citizenship's consulate here in Chicago or embassy in Washington, D.C., or they can go through that process while they're at home, potentially over summer or winter break, etc. A lost or stolen passport, similarly, can be, can kind of be navigated by, contacting the consulate here in Chicago or again the embassy in D.C. As needed. But we note that here because it is important for students to ensure that they start to think about a system, that they will use to actually maintain their documents. Because all of those documents, each time they come home, they're going to have to carry with them their passport. The passport should have a valid visa sticker, and they will need their I-20 or DS-2019 immigration document with a travel signature, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then, of course, if they have questions or they're not sure, they can always reach out to Samuel. So the first thing I want to just run through is specific to travel abroad and re-entry over the course of the next 4 years, as well as traveling in the United States and what we recommend. A student on a visa, may travel out of the United States, any number of times over the course of their program here at the University of Chicago. In order to be granted re-entry on their student visa, they need the documents that you see here on the list. Again, a valid passport, an unexpired visa sticker, and a valid I-20 or DS-2019 immigration document that also contains a travel signature. Now, we offer travel signatures, and it's a little bit of an antiquated system with the US government, but we offer travel signatures throughout the year, typically leading up to winter break, leading up to spring break, and then certainly leading up to the summer break, just to try and pop up, all over campus, typically with some candy, so students, stop by, and we can provide them that travel signature. In the event that your student may leave the country with their passport only, they can reach out to us and we can send an updated I-20 or DS-2019 to them electronically. Each time they enter the United States, they have to print and sign and carry that immigration document and present it with their passport that contains the valid visa sticker. And then, the only other thing, I would say here specific to traveling in the United States is that, it's not necessary for them to carry their I-20 or DS-2019 for travel domestically, but, if there's some opportunity, if, for example, many of our students find that they take, cruises, or they might go to Mexico, that's when they should be carrying all of those documents. But otherwise, domestic travel, they can take just their passports. So I just want to also spend some time just to quickly talk about the difference between the visa sticker and their status in the United States. The visa sticker that's issued by the U.S. Consular Embassy is used for entry, into the U.S. Once your student has entered and is entered in that status, their status or the legal length of stay is then determined by the immigration document issued by the university, either the I-20 for F1 visa sticker holders or the DS-2019 for J1 visa sticker holders. What that means is that the visa sticker itself may expire while your student is in the United States, and the visa sticker can be renewed the next time they leave. What that means is that they don't need to immediately depart the United States to obtain a new visa sticker. They can remain here legally on the I-20 or the DS-2019 that they have, and use that for for legal stay and status. So just to kind of play this out, here you see an example of a visa sticker. And like I said, that visa sticker can expire while your student is in the United States, and it does not require immediate travel. It just means the next time they travel home, they're actually scheduling an appointment with the consular embassy, applying for the updated visa in order to enter the United States and maintain that ongoing F1 or J1 visa status. So you'll see here examples of the I-20. This is an example of an I-20, and we'll look at a DS-2019 next for anyone who is coming on a J1 visa. But the program start and the program end date that you see circled here is typically going to encompass the entire 4 years of their time at the University of Chicago. And these are the validity dates of that status, right? So back to my earlier point, if your student arrives here, let's just say in year 2 or year 3, their visa sticker expires, but they're in classes, they don't have plans to return home until winter or spring break, they can remain legally in the United States on the basis of them having valid status on the basis of this document. So long as they've entered the United States in F1 status and they're enrolling and otherwise maintaining their status, then they're good to go. The one important other note I want to just kind of draw your attention to here is that program end date. the end date is likely to coincide with the very last day of the spring quarter 4 years, from now. So you may actually, be looking at that even as we're meeting this morning, and noticing that that date likely doesn't correspond to the date of our graduation ceremonies here at the University of Chicago, which is totally fine. But that end date is also the indicator for when your student will actually start the process of applying for post-graduation optional practical training, or in the event of a J-1 visa holder, post-graduation academic training. Those are the employment benefits. The timing of those, are pretty specific to this program end date, and that end date is recorded in our systems. It means that your student will start to get reminders, typically, around 4 to 6 months in advance of that date to say, hey, keep in mind, your immigration, your status in the US is set to expire, with your graduation this spring. Now is the time to start thinking about applying for OPT, if that's, the case, or academic training if you're a J-1 visa holder. Again, we do draw attention to these things, with your students directly, but I just want to highlight those here. And here you see the DS 2019 document, which is the J-1 visa document, and circled are the program dates. I mentioned earlier the I-94 arrival record. This one is a little granulated, I apologize, but this is the record issued by US Customs and Border Protection that indicates, again, that record number, as well as all of the information specific to your student's name, birth date, passport number, country of citizenship, and you see there at the bottom the verified date of entry into the United States and the class in which they were admitted, or the visa status. This one indicates B1, but otherwise, a student entering on an F1 visa, it would be indicated there. And this information is issued each and every time your student arrives in the United States. We don't check or verify the information after the initial entry, but we do recommend that your student just takes a screen grab each time they arrive in the US and adds it to an ongoing kind of electronic document. This is the best evidence and documentation to support any future applications that they might make if there are questions about when they arrived, how they arrived. Again, these records become extremely important in that way. And it's just good practice for them to start to capture these records and keep them, moving forward. Excuse me. So just to recap here, really, the visa is an entry document. That's the visa sticker. It's important to note here that Canadian citizens do not need to obtain a visa sticker. That is the only country that is visa exempt. But status in the US is dictated or determined by the validity dates listed on the I-20 or DS 2019. And as long as those dates are valid and your student has maintained their status, they may remain in the US even if the visa sticker has expired. It just means the next time they go home, they will need to apply for an updated visa from the US consulate or embassy. And many of you may now be aware of the fact that a number of US consulates and embassies are waiving in-person appointments for applicants who are renewing or applying for a status for which they have already been granted. So if your student is in need of an updated visa at any point, even during their academic program here at the University of Chicago, or let's say they go on to graduate study after, if they've been granted the F or the J visa once before, it may be that they won't have to appear in person, but they can go through a process, where they mail in their passport and obtain a visa without having to appear. we'll talk a little more about employment here, and move through. We've not got a ton of additional content, but I want to make sure that we have plenty of time at the end for questions. Again, we will remind your students that they may work on campus without any prior permission or authorization from the U.S. government or from the Office of International Affairs. On-campus employment is limited to 20 hours per week or less during academic quarters. Students can work more than that amount during academic breaks if they happen to be on campus. But it's just important for them to, keep that in mind. The university has some, checks in place, that will prevent students from trying to work more than 20 hours. Academically, the program here is, rigorous enough, and we want to ensure that they're engaged in doing not only their academic work, but if they are working 20 hours, that still also gives them some time to get involved in interests, clubs, intramural sports, etc. And, if your student, after they get here, if they find an opportunity that they'd like to pursue, they can always reach out to Samuel, and he can kind of guide them through that process if they have questions. We'll talk a little more specifically now just about off-campus employment. I mentioned earlier, the employment benefits tied to each student visa are quite specific. So CPT and OPT are employment benefits of the F1 student visa, where academic training is the employment benefit tied to the J1 visa. Both require authorization prior to a student beginning work, right? So it's important that students are aware that these authorizations have application processes. Academic training and CPT are processed and approved here at the Office of International Affairs. OPT, typically used after graduation, is an application that goes to the US federal government, and we will guide your students kind of through that application process. One of the things we often hear from the students is, I want to do this internship, it's unpaid, that means I don't need academic training or CPT or any sort of employment authorization, and that is not true. So any off-campus opportunity typically requires authorization, and we just recommend that students reach out to talk to us about the available authorizations and how they should go about applying. Again, we work very closely with career advancement, and your students will be working very closely with career advancement to navigate internships and find opportunities. And we work kind of together to ensure that not only do they secure the internship, but in the process, they've actually obtained the appropriate authorization. I'm going to move on from here and just kind of recap. Again, students after arriving in Chicago, typically within that first week, should complete check-in. Again, if they're arriving in another location in the U.S. to visit family or friends, or take a short trip before they arrive here in Chicago, they don't need to worry about taking this step until they get here. They're reminded to maintain their status, and as we discussed earlier, really focusing initially, or even before they've arrived, on updating their information in my.uchicago.edu. And that includes providing an accurate and correct foreign address, providing an accurate US address, which they should know or will know very soon, as well as providing accurate and correct contact information for emergency contacts. Of course, we remind students, don't forget your documents, certainly don't forget your passport. You won't actually be granted boarding when you go to O'Hare International Airport. But if you forget your I-20 or DS-2019, your student can always reach out and we can send an updated document. Understanding the difference between the visa stamp or sticker and status is important, for students. I think often students think that because their visa sticker is expired or expiring, that they need to plan immediate international travel, and that's not the case. And then just understanding the difference between working on campus versus working off campus and what is required or not specific to the student visa. I'm going to talk quickly now just about the Social Security number and the individual tax identification number. These are ID documents that are granted by the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS here in the United States. Most international students are not immediately eligible for a Social Security number, and that can create just difficulty in obtaining, or opening bank accounts, for example, or getting a cell phone plan. It's not impossible to navigate those systems without a Social Security number. And we have information on our website specific to opening bank accounts, which banks are close or even on campus, as well as cell phone service providers, and navigating that process without a Social Security number and what that looks like. But a Social Security number, again, is typically not going to be available for international students until they have been here for their first academic year. Excuse me. If your student has been granted a Social Security number historically or in the past, that number is theirs for life. If they don't recall it or have lost the card, they can always, apply for a replacement. We work very closely with, excuse me, the Social Security Administration here in Hyde Park. So if there are questions, and we have information about the application process for a Social Security number on our website as well. The individual tax identification number is typically only going to become necessary if your student is receiving University of Chicago scholarship or funding, and they will work directly either with our office or with the college to kind of navigate this process. Often what happens is that they apply for the, excuse me, they apply for the ITIN as part of their annual tax return filing, which happens usually in late February through mid-April each calendar year. As I mentioned, again, there are tax responsibilities. Even if your student is not employed or working on campus during the year, they are asked by the IRS to complete a document and file it. We provide to them access to a system called SprintTax, which is tax preparation software specifically for international students in the United States. It guides them through the process, asks them a series of questions, and then tells them what they need to do in order to either file a tax return for taxes overpaid or just file that document that indicates that they've not worked or received earned wages in the US in the previous calendar year. Taxation in the United States is on the basis of the calendar year, and each year the filing process deadline is sometime in mid-April. We make the tax software available along with a number of workshops and recorded webinars to students, usually beginning in, as I mentioned, late February. So that gives them some time to kind of work through this process, and kind of ensure that they have access to SprintTax and can get that taken care of. So some final reminders here, asking your students to just start thinking about a way or using a document holder that they know and can use consistently to ensure that that's the place where they always keep their passport, they always keep their immigration documents, that they have both physical and electronic copies of those documents. It's important, and we try to convey this to students throughout orientation and then throughout their academic programs. But these are their immigration documents that become part of their immigration record in the United States. It's important, and may be important for them down the road, to be able to pull up copies of the I-20s issued to them by the University of Chicago And while they're here, they may receive a number of I-20s as they apply for CPT or academic training, OPT, and those kinds of things. Each of those actions results in a new I-20, and it's important that students not lose, or destroy. And of course, that sometimes happens, and that's fine. But if there is a way for them to just keep both the physical and electronic copies available, that is incredibly important. Our OIA website is dedicated information specific to F&J visa holders here at the University of Chicago. It's available to you as parents, if you have questions. We have a number of newsletters that even you as parents can sign up for. I know Samuel will pop in a link here to subscribe if you want to see the newsletter that's sent to your student. During the academic year, that goes out twice monthly, so every other week, and then during the summer, once per month. But that newsletter contains a lot of reminders and just good information, for students, especially as we approach breaks or travel season. Don't forget your documents. If you need a travel signature, here's where you can find us, that kind of thing. Certainly, all of that's available to you as parents and as our partners in this. One of the things we tell students pretty consistently is that they beware of scams. There are a number of sophisticated scams occurring pretty consistently in the United States, where someone will call and impersonate a government agent or indicate to an individual that they have run afoul or are in violation of something. And in order to, kind of get out of that, they are required to pay a fine or a fee over the phone. What we tell students consistently is that government officials will never contact you by telephone. If there is some question or they need some additional information, they will send an actual letter. They might even reach out to us at the university, but they will never contact a student directly. Even if they happen to have some relatively personal information. With social media and all of the information that's now available online, that's not impossible to obtain. So if you can also remind your students just to beware of scams in the United States, we have again additional information on our website about this, what to do if they get a phone call like that. They can always call us, and verify what they're being told. We will tell them to promptly hang up and block the phone number. And as I mentioned at the start of the session today, there are a number of offices who are dedicated really to just providing, support and information and act as resources for your students while they're here to ensure not only that they have a great experience at the University of Chicago, which I'm sure they will, but that they kind of navigate the academic requirements, that if they find that they need support, from student wellness, or they need to see a doctor for some reason, that they know where to go, how to go about doing that without feeling stress or anxiety, and that they always can reach out to OIA if they're unsure of where to go, and we can kind of help them navigate, who to reach out to and who to contact. Our contact information is on the website. I mentioned our newsletter. I will also just mention the International House, or iHouse, at UChicago. They have a terrific newsletter that has a lot of upcoming programs that are available to international and domestic students. Certainly, if you're interested, you can always check out iHouse at UChicago. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're gonna run through some questions here. So the first question, for programs abroad, both Civ Studies and work experience, will there be limitation based on our national non-US citizen passports, or has UChicago made provisions for things like that? I think what you're referring to is if there are internships abroad or study abroad experience, how do students navigate either obtaining a visa to participate, in those instances. And I know that both career advancement, but also the study abroad office, they will provide information to your student about what's required and how to go about making that application such that they're successful in, kind of moving through that process. So the next question is about authorization for off-campus work. And there is information on our website specific to CPT and OPT. Samuel has chatted in a link there. If you go up to 835, I know there's a link there. But the authorization application process is outlined for college students on our website. As I mentioned, typically international students will not be eligible for off-campus employment in their first academic year, right? So most of our students will not actually proceed with internships until summer between years 1 and 2. And at that point, as mentioned, we will work very closely with career advancement to ensure that not only are your students securing competitive and terrific opportunities and internships, but along the way, they're actually obtaining and applying for the employment authorization specific to their visa type. The next question here, my child's passport will expire 2 years later while he is at the college. In this case, he needs both to get a new passport and a new F1 visa from the embassy in Chicago. So just to clarify here, if your child's passport is expiring, they will work either with their country of citizenship's consulate or embassy in the United States to obtain a new passport, or while they're at home visiting you, then they would apply for the updated passport. It's not uncommon for a passport to expire but still contain a valid visa. And what typically happens in these scenarios is that the student then is traveling with 2 passports, the expired passport with the unexpired or valid visa sticker, as well as the valid passport. If both the passport and the visa sticker expire, then your child will apply for first an updated or new passport, and then have to obtain the updated visa sticker at a U.S. consulate or embassy abroad. Unfortunately, currently, the U.S. government does not permit visa renewals to occur within the United States. Those have to take place at a U.S. consulate or embassy abroad, typically at the same consulate or embassy to which they originally applied. So the next question is just about the academic program that was indicated on the I-20, and whether, that student, it looks like the student is doing a STEM course. Will this affect or impact their eligibility for STEM OPT? No. So the quick answer here is that once your student arrives on campus and begins to work with their academic advisor, it's at that point that they will declare their major. And it's not uncommon for students over the course of their 4 years here at the University of Chicago to change majors. So they might be computer science, but they might then decide, actually, I want to be, molecular engineering, whatever the case might be. So the major will change likely, a few times over the course of their program. That will not impact their eligibility for STEM OPT at the end of their program, because close to graduation and typically in their 4th year, they will have finalized the degree requirements, their major or majors, if they're doing dual majors or even, a 3rd major. And all of that information then will be updated on their I-20 well before they actually apply for OPT or the STEM OPT extension. The next question is, how many classes are needed to be considered a full-time student? The answer to that is 3, typically. Our our classes here at the University of Chicago are assigned units, which are like credits, and a full-time, an academic full-time load is considered 300 or more units in an academic quarter. The next question is about that I-94 record. Does it mean that the student has to update the I-94 each time they enter the US? I just want to clarify here that the I-94 itself is updated each time they enter the United States. So the I-94 is an arrival record, and what that means is that each time they arrive in the US, it will be different than the last time. And we recommend just that they obtain screen grabs of that record each time and just add it, to a running document, so that if ever there are questions, the student has all of that documented and can provide it. There's a question here just about financial aid without receiving a reply. I would recommend, in that instance, I'm not sure exactly how to go about that, but I would recommend that your student reaches out to financial aid to ensure that they received his original inquiry, and if not, that he can pose it, and he can call or email the financial aid office, and that information is available on their website. So question here about Social Security numbers and applying for phone or bank account. To clarify, if your child does not have a Social Security number, he or she may still apply for a cell phone plan and bank account. It just it will require a few additional steps, to kind of go about that process, but it is not impossible, and it's actually quite easy without the Social Security number. It just may be that when your student goes to apply for a phone number or a bank account, they will be asked typically for a Social Security number, and they just need to indicate that they're here as an international student on a visa and they do not yet have a Social Security number, and then that will just change the process by which they sign up for a phone number or a bank account. The next question is about international students taking part in government-funded research. Typically that is not going to be prohibited. There really wouldn't be any reason that wouldn't be an opportunity that they could participate in. I know Stan's typing in a question here about on-campus work, so that's sorted. A question here about driver's license. So my child has a driver's license in their home country. Can they drive in the US upon arrival, or do they need to take a driver's test again? The state of Illinois and driver's license in the United States is governed by the states, not at the federal or the much larger federal government level. And what that means is that in Illinois, an international driver's license is valid typically only for 6 months from the date of first entry. So your child could use that driver's license initially. They might use that driver's license to get into age-restricted establishments, but otherwise, after 6 months here, they would need to go through the driver's license application in the state of Illinois. One thing to note there is that the state of Illinois does require a Social Security number in order to be granted an Illinois driver's license. So if your child is not eligible yet for a Social Security number, they will not be eligible yet for the driver's license and would have to wait until typically after their first year in their program. With that, I think there are no further questions. Samuel and I, and certainly, thank you to our colleagues in the college programming office for making arrangements for this morning. If you have follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. I think we can put in here, I'll happily put in my contact information. If you do have follow-up questions, please reach out. Otherwise, I anticipate we will see a few of you here on campus this fall and coming up very quickly. And we're very much looking forward to welcoming your students here on campus at the University of Chicago and supporting them while they're here. Have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon, evening, and a terrific weekend. And thank you again for joining us today. All right, bye-bye.